advisory firm located in Brownsville, Texas. We've got clients in many states, and I want to thank you for participating in our very first live webinar called Saturday Academy Series, which is going to talk once per month on a variety of financial topics. Look forward to doing the one in August, which is about women and money. So if you're interested in what you saw today, feel free to make sure that you check back with us for the dates of that. It'll be located on our website, and I'll get to that in just a minute. I just want to give you a quick talk about today's webinar, and then we'll move on into the actual presentation today. It should run about 45 minutes to an hour at the most. And there's not going to be a chance for me to interact with you for specific questions on this particular webinar, so we hope that you will, if you have questions at any point along the way and would like a more general answer or something even specific for your needs, feel free to email or call the office, and we're happy to discuss it with you. Again, this is a retirement planning seminar, probably based ideally for people, I don't know, probably 5 to 25 years away from retirement who are getting serious about it. Usually people wait until they're within 20 years before they get very serious about it, and I really wish people would do it sooner, and we'll talk a little bit about why that is. But after the purpose, I hope, of you attending this seminar today, by the end of it, you should have a better idea of what it will take to not just save for retirement or kind of sort of plan for retirement, but you'll not only understand the necessity of having a good, solid, written, detailed financial plan, but also how to go about that. And if you go, as we go through this, and as you feel a little bit overwhelmed, probably another opportunity for you to take a look at, maybe I do need to find a financial advisor or a financial planning firm to work with. Okay? I want to give you just a quick touch about us and about myself, and then we'll move into the presentation. nVest Advisors, if you're not familiar, is a fee-only investment advisory financial planning firm. We are located in Texas, specifically Brownsville, Texas is where my corporate offices are at. We do have clients in many states and all over the state of Texas, in fact, so we're very adept and good at working with you from remote locations and using technology to do so. So if you are needing a financial firm, don't fret that we're not right around the corner from you. We're more than happy to work with you pretty much no matter where you are. As opposed to some firms, a lot of financial firms like to do what they call whale hunting, which is to find those super huge accounts so they don't have to manage very many clients, so they'll look for the ultra wealthy individuals, or they'll look for the heavily retired in Fort Lauderdale kind of clients. And although we have a few very wealthy clients, we do have a few retired clients. That's not what this firm was structured to do. I am 44 years of age. I believe that the future of financial planning is going to involve a lot of technology, and it's going to be more nimble, and we need to be more adaptive to a global market. That makes us more philosophically inclined, I should say, for people who are younger than retirement age, somebody who is a little bit more comfortable with using a tablet or doing a FaceTime appointment. So we set up our business specifically for working people still, professionals, working families, small business owners, and especially small business owners. I've got a lot of experience with that, but because we work with small businesses and we do individual retirement accounts and joint accounts and trusts and those kinds of things also, but we do a lot of 401k and 403b client accounts, as well as things like SEP or simple IRAs. Those are, if you're a small business owner, you'll probably be more familiar with those than if you're a W-2 employee. Because we are custom made for people who are still getting started and still trying to build their financial life, it's just hugely important to me that we have the ability and we have the desire to work with people who aren't wealthy yet. We've always had a standard policy at nVest Advisors. We have no account minimums ever. And because we are a fee-only firm, and those are the only kinds of investment tools that we use, there are no commissions on any of the products we use, and there's never a surrender charge on any of the things that we do. So basically people might ask, well, what do you do then? Well, we do investment management for a flat fee per year. It's based on the size of your account balance, which we have a tier. So the more money, as the money grows, the less cost percentage-wise that costs your account. if you do have us manage your account, then we actually do all the financial planning parts of your relationship with us for free. But you may say to us, Jeremy, we don't have a financial account anywhere. We don't, I'm only doing my 401k at work. In that case, we do have low cost for a flat fee financial planning services as well. So don't feel like you can't be of use to, we can't be of use to you just because you may not have an account that that we can manage for you, okay? If you want to check out more about the firm itself, you can go to our website, nvestadvisors.com. That's the letter N, V-E-S-T, advisors.com. Now this is a normal, my next little bit here is that it's very normal if you see a presentation like this, you might think, maybe the guy has got something going on. He sounds like somebody that I might trust with my money, but I'm not sure yet. And that's very normal to take several visits to a website or several conversations with somebody before you trust somebody with your financial future. We totally understand that. Trust takes time, especially in an industry that's not well known to be trustworthy, and our industry has caused a lot of financial problems. And we're here to supposedly solve financial problems, and here we are sometimes causing them. So I understand your hesitancy or maybe even skepticism. But what I ask is this: if you do like today's presentation, you think we present things in what I hope is a fun and informal and easy to understand way, there are lots of ways to stay in touch with us, even if you don't become a client right away or ever. We'd love to have you still use this as a financial resource, and we have a lot of ways that you can connect with us. On the left side, you see that graphic that says Money in 30. That is our podcast. It was less frequent than it's going to become in the future, but you can pick that up on iTunes, and I have noticed several independent websites grabbing that podcast already, where you can listen to it from other places as well. So love to have you subscribe to the podcast if that's your thing. There's also lots and lots of places in social media that you can like and follow us, just depending on what your preferred social media platform is for that kind of thing. But we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, Google+, LinkedIn, pretty much anywhere you want to find somebody like that, we're going to be there for you. And we post a lot of not just promotional materials or company created ones, but if we see a financial article that we like, or just something about how to succeed in business, or ways that you can improve your resume, things like that, we love to put out those kind of links. So we're happy to, you'll see a lot of posts if you like us there. The top graphic that says nVest Academy, that is a 24-hour a day live free financial resource website separate from our corporate website that lets you look at and use financial calculators, look at various articles on just about any financial subject you can think of. There's lots of little mini seminars, little 3 or 4 minute videos to train you on money subjects. It's important to me, coming from a poor beginning basically, that the average person gets a chance to get good, solid financial education. So these things are offered as a community service without any cost or any obligation, because we think it's important that the working class people in America finally get some attention paid to them and get some education about how money works. There's a reason that the tallest building in every city is owned by either a bank or an insurance company, and that's because they know how money works and we don't. And my mission at nVest Advisors is to help regular, working class, middle income Americans learn how to master money, and that's what this whole company we're set up. So quickly about me, I have 12 years of insurance and investment experience in 2 states, Colorado and Texas. 5 years of that I've been an independent financial advisor. I started with a major firm, just like all of the other advisors do. Realized almost immediately that, as it says in scripture, you cannot sit at the table of 2 masters. I wanted to really work for my client, and as long as I worked for a company, I always had that kind of big brother hand on my shoulder trying to steer me toward expensive products and high commission type of production quotas and that kind of thing. And I realized that you can't possibly work for your customer and work for your firm at the same time. They're mutually exclusive in most cases. So the day I was able to get out of my contract and go independent, I did. And I've been independent since then. And 1 year so far, of that 5 years, we have been a fee-only registered investment advisor. Combining with my financial advisor experience, I have about 20 years total as a small business owner under my belt. So my heart is deeply embedded with small business owners. Nobody, unless you've owned your own business and you've known the struggles associated with that, you just don't know. I mean, business owners know each other and we can relate well to each other. I have, just like you, if you're a small business owner, I've laid away trying to figure out how you're going to make all of those bills payable by the due date on this particular month. I've been the last guy paid in my company for many years. I know what it is to make that tax bill due, and when the accountant says that you owe more in taxes this quarter than you took home in profit. At one point we had about 70 employees total. So I get you. If you're a small business owner, I've seen good times and bad times, the end of an industry, the beginning of an industry. It's been a great experience. And I've used that over the course of not only my professional career, but a number of volunteer organizations that I've been part of that help mentor and coach small businesses as they either start up or as they struggle. So it's a very, very important part of my heart, and that's why nVest Advisors was made for people just like you, okay? You might not be able to tell because I'm a little hoarse today, but I am have been a professional actor since my teenage years. I took about a 20-year hiatus from that while I raised my family. And my daughter, who's now 18, really, really wanted to see me do something for real instead of watching old videotapes of her dad acting. So in the last couple of years, I've begun to pick some of that up again in my spare time. Having a great time doing it. You can see in the center photo, my most recent stage production is Booley in Driving Miss Daisy, which we got a great acclaim at a local theater down here in Brownsville. And now I'm just starting to take over and do some voiceover work and narration, which I find fits better with my schedule. So anyway, a little bit about me, so you've got now a face to put with this. And let me just give you a quick disclaimer that we need to go over, and then we can get into the presentation today. Obviously, the information we're putting out to you today is without any cost or obligation. It is a community service. To me, it feels a little bit like mission work to do this, but it's for your education or entertainment only. It's not to be to ever take the place of an individual personal financial consultation with a financial advisor. It is not a personal financial plan. I think this is pretty common sense, but we personally at nVest Advisors, because we assume a fiduciary role with our clients with every agreement or every account we take on, we don't provide personal financial advice to individuals without a signed client agreement. So just to let you know that, if you want to have any more information about us, including any of our disclosure brochures that are required by law, look at our privacy policy, our ownership, etc., it can be found on our website. We try to be very transparent at nvestadvisors.com. Okay? Into our actual presentation today. And what I want to start out with, and as these photos kind of fill in the screen, I want you to think about and close your eyes a little bit and imagine what retirement is going to look like for you. And that doesn't matter if you're 5 years away. It'd probably be a little bit more realistic if you're 5 years away. But let's say you're even 25 years old or 35 years old. A young person, I hate to break it to you, 20-year-olds, 20-somethings, but you're going to grow old and retire someday. As I sit here halfway in my mid-40s, I didn't think that I'd ever be 45, let alone 65. But the reality comes up on you. So if you're younger and watching this, good for you that you're actually taking this seriously at a young age. But at any age, I want you guys to close your eyes a little bit and think about what retirement will look like for you. Can you imagine yourself done with work, maybe, and retired? Does that include, I don't know, you tell me. Does that include traveling? Or does that include maybe that you're going to take up a hobby like golf or sailboating, or you're going to get season tickets to your favorite sports team and build a huge den like a man cave type of thing, which I'd love to do with my Denver Broncos. Are you going to go see the sights around the world? Are you going to travel to your children or grandchildren? You're going to take cruises. There's a lot of dreaming that we do when we think about retiring. Okay, many of us look forward to obviously hobbies or travel, but some of us may even see retirement as an opportunity now to stop having to work at the job we have to do, and maybe taking up a job that we always wanted to do. Maybe like photography, or something of that effect. Okay. Anyway, we have good reasons as Americans to see retirement in a positive light. Even with all the negative news that gets dumped on us all the time, we live in a great place, and we have the greatest retirement potential of any country in the world. So, I mean, Americans are living longer, happier lives than ever before. In fact, for some of us, retirement will even take up maybe as much as a third of our lifespan, which is just unheard of in previous generations. But of course, this means, though, that if you're going to have a long retirement, which we hope, that means that the money that we save before retirement is going to have to cover a lot of years, like 2 decades or more. And that's what makes planning for it so important. Okay? So how do you create a... Okay, so if you were going to plan for retirement, let's use the analogy of maybe taking a long road trip somewhere, because it's retirement for most of us is 15, 20, 25 years away. If you were just going to get in your car and point at a direction, you would probably end up somewhere vaguely close to where you were going to go, but you wouldn't end up exactly there, right? And most people would not take a vehicle and just point it north and expect that they would end up in a specific city somewhere north of where they are. You need a road map. And so in financial planning, we view it very much the same way. Sometimes because of where we live near the Gulf of Mexico, when I talk about this in seminars here, I mention it's sort of like, I think for most people, retirement is sort of like you're sailing toward a destination, but it's in fog. You kind of know the destination's out there somewhere, but you don't know exactly how to get there. You don't know what obstacles might be in the way, what kind of dangers you might face. So in those cases, we have to lift the fog somehow. We have to be able to see the road. And that's what financial planning does, and what we try to do here for all of our clients when we create a financial plan. So we're going to talk a little bit about, maybe the next 15 minutes, about how to create this plan in specific steps. And then we'll talk about some specific investment vehicles you might use, types of accounts, and then we'll move on into some general investment considerations and get done. But where would you begin? Well, obviously at the beginning. So the first thing we'll talk about is why it's important to begin right now. No matter what your age, you really cannot start any less. I mean, it's so important. You have to start now if you can, okay? And we'll talk next about answering some basic questions about retirement so that you have an idea of specifics. It's not enough to say, I want to retire, 60-ish, and maybe where we'll live, I don't know. You need to start getting very specific about retirement so that we can eventually do the next step, which is put some numbers to it and make it a realistic and workable plan. Okay, so that's what we'll do, is we'll answer some basic questions. I'll kind of point you in the right direction on a couple of things, like what age you should consider retiring, and then I'll show you how to crunch together some general numbers. You're going to need to make them more specific for yourself, but we will definitely get you on the right track. Okay. After that, we're going to talk about the different ways that you can save for retirement. There's obviously personal plans, and there's employer-sponsored plans, and there's other kinds of ways to invest and save money out there. I'm going to give you the pros and cons and how kind of just look under the hood quickly on things like IRAs and 401ks and how they work. Okay, and then I'm going to talk very briefly about a specific product called an annuity that I believe, in my opinion, is often missold as an investment vehicle or a retirement vehicle when it's not necessarily the best option for you. And I'll give you some pros and cons on those, and also why we would use one or why we would consider, but why most people shouldn't. Okay? Then we'll kind of just finish up with a little bit of basic investment considerations. No matter who you are or where you invest, these are some things to keep in mind. Okay? And then finally, we'll talk just quickly about what can go wrong. If you create this wonderful financial plan, it's always dependent on really one thing, and that is your ability to keep bringing home that paycheck so that you can fund it. What happens to you if you're disabled, or God forbid somebody passes away unexpectedly? We'll talk very quickly about that. Okay? And then when you put all this together, you will see that we'll begin to create for you a plan that you can eventually take and implement. So again, this can be a very specific plan, or it may be one that you decide you don't want to do without the guidance of a financial planner or a financial advisor. All right, let's get started right now. I'm going to just start with just start now. I can't tell you how many times when I've done this in seminars, when I will ask if there's a good mix of older and younger people in the crowd, I will say to the older folks, how many of you wish that you had saved less money now that you're retired? And of course there's a lot of laughter, and nobody raises their hand. And then I would say, okay, now how many of you would say, gosh, I really wish that I had started saving later for retirement? Again, the elders will laugh and think that's funny. And I said, but see, that's what younger people need to hear, is that your older self will thank you so much for starting and thinking ahead instead of that instant gratification that our culture forces upon us. So there's a quick example here of why it's so important to let time be your friend instead of your enemy when it comes to retirement planning. Let's assume in this graph that you commit to, I'm going to put $3,000 per year away in a retirement account, and I'm going to get 6% interest, and this thing assumes no taxes are taken out or any kind of inflation, just to keep it simple. But let's say that you say, I'm going to do this, and you are just so diligent, and you start at the age of 20. Okay, which, I mean, it's a lot of difficulty at that age to find any extra money, but if you did, if you were to do that at the age of 20, that dark blue line, you would have, by the age of 65, a $680,000 or so pot of money. That's a sizable chunk of money in order to invest, to retire on. But let's say you wait, like most people, where you're young, you don't have much money, you finally get things going, and you get a little bit more serious about retirement, so you start finally putting money away at the age of 35, which is the pink line. Well, you still got 30 years to go before you retire, but you have lost a significant amount of time for your money to compound, which is really what causes that blue line to spike up the way it does near the end. Is we've given that money lots and lots of time to experience the magic of compound interest. So you've lost 15 years, but more importantly, you've now lost almost 2/3 of what your potential could have been. So now you're looking at a pot of money of about $254,400. And let's say you wait, like a lot of my clients do, is you wait now into your mid-40s to get seriously started on investing. And you put away that same $3,000 a year, growing at 6%. Now you're looking at maybe $120,000. You know, I heard years ago by a guy who mentored me in business. He wrote one time on a meeting on the whiteboard a very simple formula that always stuck with me. But it just said, success equals effort over time. He wrote it like a math formula. And he said, you can be successful in life basically one of two ways. It just takes effort and it takes time. So you can be successful with a huge amount of effort in a short amount of time. That's one way to be successful. The other way to be successful is to give it very little effort, but it'll take a long amount of time. Either way will work, and it's just a matter of which way you want to pursue it. For the young person, the 20-year-old who goes toward retirement, success can be done over a long period of time, so it's not going to require that much effort on his or her part. It's not going to take much money out per month or something like that, because you've made your sacrifice in time, not in dollars. When you wait until you're 45, you can be successful. You could still reach that $679,000 pot. It's going to just take significantly more money up front. So now your success, because you've lost the time part of that equation, now it's going to require significant effort. So our job is, and I really hope that I can pound that point home, start as soon as possible. Now, if you're 50 or older, I don't mean to discourage you. There's still a way to get some retirement savings built, but you can't waste another hour. You need to get started, okay? It's very, very, very important. Implement something today. Okay, now before you can start planning for retirement, though, we need to ask and answer 3 very basic questions, because if we don't have a specific goal we're working toward, number one, if it's vague, we're probably not going to pursue it. But also, if it's vague, it's a moving target. You're trying to throw a dart at the wall and they keep moving the bullseye. it's going to be hard to hit. So we need to ask and answer some very basic questions so that we can get to some specific numbers for you. Okay, so here's the questions. What kind of retirement do you want to plan for? When do you want to retire? And by that I mean what age? Okay, and then how long will your retirement last? And you probably say, well, I don't know that. How long do I plan to live? I'll give you a couple of statistics on that in just a minute. But the question is now, be specific. So let's talk about the first one. What kind of retirement do you want? When I asked you a few minutes ago to close your eyes and imagine your retirement, I think most of you probably thought about travel or visiting the grandkids. Some of you maybe just said, no, I'm a homebody. I'm just going to putter around the garden and I'm going to be in my home. But maybe did you think about, am I going to upsize my home? Am I going to downsize? We're going to go for a condo. We want a retirement community near a golf course. Do we want a houseboat or something strange where we're going to sail the ocean instead? Or do we want to get a camper and travel? So those kinds of questions, I need you to start to firm up and make some decisions. You can always change your mind in the future, and if you do, we'll change the plan a little bit. But at least at this point, give yourself something solid to anchor this retirement dream to. And no matter what your retirement dreams really were, I bet most of you did not include, I'm going to be greeting people at Walmart for 6 to 8 hours a shift, or I'm going to be wiping tables at my local Chick-fil-A restaurant because I didn't plan for retirement. And I know that seems kind of like a silly thing to say, but it's sad to see folks that should be enjoying their later years in life and enjoying the watching their grandkids grow, and they've got to work it in shifts because they didn't have the money saved. That's a sad reality for a lot of Americans, and that's something that we're trying to make sure that we can get away from. So for most of you, no matter what you dreamed about, your financial your retirement dreams rather included some level of financial independence. I'm sure of it. I'm sure nobody said in my retirement, as I close my eyes and imagine, I'm going to have to be living with my grown children in their home because I didn't have enough money. And that happens. Unfortunately, that happens. And it's not because people are failures in life. It is because they failed to plan. And that's what we need to move forward with. Okay? So in a moment, we're going to talk about how to go about figuring out the cost of the retirement that you want. Okay, but first let's look at some other things that are going to impact relations. This is the second question. When do you want to retire? Okay? So when I ask this question when I'm sitting with clients for the first time, it's always a joke. We'll say, when do you want to retire? Tomorrow, they'll say, or I want to retire at 50. I want to retire at 55. Those are all actually good, ambitious goals, and I don't mind if you have them, if they're realistic. But you need to remember a couple things. If you retire younger, if that's your plan, and like for many of my school teacher clients, because we do a lot of accounts with school teachers, they're eligible to retire because of the state pension systems at 57, 58, long before the average W-2 corporate employee is eligible to retire. But in your case, we say, well, okay, now if you retire at, let's say we have a school teacher here, if you're 57 years old and you retire then, remember this, the younger you retire, the less time you're going to have to accumulate funds before that date, and the longer that money has to last in retirement. Okay? So just be realistic about, we all want to retire as early as possible, but doing so may sabotage our long-term financial success. So be realistic and give yourself the time necessary to reach those financial savings goals that you have before you get there. Okay? There's a couple of other things to consider. If you retire too much younger than the normal retirement age, and you are expecting Social Security, let's say that you want to retire at 55, you will not get Social Security benefits until the age of 62 minimum, and I really strongly encourage you not to take Social Security benefits that early. I hope that you'll wait till either 66 or 67 when it's your full retirement pension, because your amount at 62 is significantly less than it would be if you just waited those 4 years. Okay, so if you retire before age 62 or 66, you'll have to fully fund all of your income and expense needs from other sources. Your pension's not going to be there. Now, if you're lucky and you're part of a different state pension system, that may be a different scenario for you. But for most working people, 62 ought to be the earliest age most of you consider retiring, unless you've got a substantial sum already built. Okay. Now, even if you say, yeah, I'll be ready at 62 because I'll have my debts taken care of. One other thing to remember is that you will not be eligible for Medicare until the age of 65. And what that means is that for the whatever years that you are retired prior to 65, you will be responsible to cover your own health care costs. And that may be substantial, especially as we go forward in the future, as healthcare costs seem to skyrocket year after year. Okay, so you will be eligible for Medicare at 65. You will be eligible for Social Security at 62, although ideally I would have you wait until 66 or 67, depends on your birth year, which one is your retirement year. And the shorter that the earlier you retire, the less time you have to build your money, and the longer that money has to last. Okay, so that we want you to remember. Now, that's the next question: is how long will I need to make that money last for? That's a great question, because people. Let me give you a real life situation, and this will explain why Social Security, as you see in the news, is always on the verge of insolvency. In 1934, when the Social Security Administration created the program, the average life expectancy of a male in America was 72. The average life expectancy of a woman was 76. So, and your retirement age was still 65. So you had a guy, the idea behind the program was a person was working for that 40, 45, even 50 years paying taxes into the Social Security system, will retire at 65, and then statistically the government only had to come up with benefits for that person for 7 years, maybe 10 or 11 once he passed away for his wife, so another 4 years or so after that. But that was it. That is not the case anymore. It's obvious we are living longer, we are healthier, we have more active lives. In fact, there are now 67,000 Americans over the age of 100 as of 2013, and that number is going to continue to grow. I think you'll see major advances in the next just few years of cancer treatments that'll hopefully beat that god-awful illness. But they're making so many great strides in terms of nutrition and exercise. We may be here, I'm 44, maybe my expectation should be to be here much later than maybe even in my 90s or even over 100. But right now, if you are 65 years of age, right now in America, you can expect to live on average another 19.3 years. So your life expectancy is about 83, 84 years old. And it is expected that as our population gets older and medical science continues to make these advancements, life expectancy should increase. What that means is that your retirement may last more than 25 years. So let's just stay with that number. Let's say 25 years is the number of years that you should expect to be retired. So as we move forward with our calculations now, at least we have the number of years we need to have some sort of, okay? So let's learn how to crunch some numbers together. So in the next couple of slides, we're going to talk about estimating your retirement expenses, figuring out where the income's going to come from, and seeing if there's a shortfall or a gap, okay? Then we're going to calculate what your investment goal, what that pot should look like for you. And then we'll touch just briefly on how to add an accounting for inflation, or at least keep that in the back of your mind that inflation is going to change those numbers. By the way, the only reason for you to save money in an IRA is to cover a gap, an expected gap. Some people will put money away not knowing why, or not knowing what's the goal. When do I know that I've actually met this need? Do I just keep socking money away, or do I actually is there an end zone? Is there an end in sight? That's why you invest. You invest to cover the gaps. A little bit first about your expenses, okay? In most financial circles, or any articles you'll read, or many of the talking heads or books that are out there, they'll tell you that you should estimate, usually they say somewhere between 60 to 90% of your pre-retirement income is what you should be striving for in retirement. I think that's a little simplistic. I think that's too vague, because expenses will be very different for you in retirement. So what I believe the best thing to do to begin to calculate this number that you need is, don't worry about so much your income before you retired, but let's think about your actual expenses and how they will be different now, in the future versus the way they are now. For example, when you retire, let's say in 25 years, you will have most likely your house paid off. You'll have probably the kids, you hope, the kids out of the house and self-sufficient, but you might think, now we have grandchildren, so our travel expenses might be up a little bit. I might be wanting to golf a little bit. Maybe our meal expenses will be up because maybe we'll eat out more than we do now that we cook at home so much. So there's a lot of things to consider. Some of your expenses will be significantly lower in retirement, but others, like healthcare, may be significantly higher. So the way that I want you to begin to create this first bit of your financial plan is to look at today's expenses, like make 2 columns on a sheet of paper and write this today's current expenses, and then I want you to estimate on the next column what will be different about those expenses in retirement and come up with a different bottom number. Okay, so, and also make sure when you're doing this to include estimates for stuff you want to do when you're retired. So we maybe want to add some travel money to that budget. We want to do I want to pick up golf. We want to take a cruise once a year. Whatever your desired retirement looks like, make sure you include those estimates in your expenses. So that's a different way to look at it. Not so much that we're trying to get to some percentage of your before retirement income, but we want to cover your expenses. And one of the things that I do when I sit with clients and make a financial plan is that we basically run a 3-pronged attack. When you sit with me, if you're 45 years old, I'll say, all right, we need to get you obviously saving for the long term, so we want you doing some retirement savings. I also want you to get out of debt. That's a very important one. So what we try to do before you retire is to get those expenses as low as possible, so that you can meet a dignified retirement with the least amount of money, and then everything above that we can get to is play money. It's stuff for you to go do and enjoy and have some dignity and have some choices in retirement. And then the third prong of attack that we would do is to make sure that you've got a short-term, we call an emergency fund, set up so that if you have something major happen in life, down here a hurricane is not all that common, but it happens, and if a hurricane came through and took off half your roof, if you don't have some emergency money set aside, the only place to get that money is to go further in debt. So we try to get you saving long-term, saving for emergencies, and getting out of debt. And we attack those 3 at the same time over whatever time period we have before the client retires. Okay? So the next one here is, now that we've looked at our various expenses, let's see where the income is going to come to cover them. We have, and they call this the 3-legged retirement income stool. But in truth, most Americans really only ever have really 2 of these 3 legs. So you don't even get a stool, guys. You get, like, I don't know why they call it 2-legged stool, but you're going to have to hold yourself up. The 3-legged stools back in the days of the 1930s and 40s and 50s was Social Security. Everyone got that benefit. A traditional employer pension. Companies have long since, most of them, done away with pensions. Very few places still have them, and you usually have to be some sort of public sector employee to qualify for anything that has a pension. And the third leg is individual savings and investments. Now let's talk just briefly about Social Security, and I'll move on to that. I don't know if most of you are aware, hopefully you look at those reports that come from the Social Security Administration every so often that show you what your benefits would be based on your income. It's very, very important that you check those regularly. For a couple reasons. One, just to make sure that the information that Social Security has on you is correct, but also to make sure that you know, as you're adjusting your financial plan, what your actual benefit looks like. And when you'll see it based on if you retire at 62, if you retire at 66, if you retire at 67, you'll get those actual numbers and what that pension will be. So you can plug in a real number into your financial plan rather than guess at it. Okay? The website at the very bottom of this tab shows where you can go, and there's actually some quick calculators, but you can also create an account at that website where you can see your actual Social Security benefit at any point. Okay, if you don't do this, that's fine. You're just going to get those periodic statements in the mail, and hang on to those and make sure that your financial advisor gets them. But just to give you an example of how much Social Security is going to cover for you, we used the quick calculator, and here's an actual person born in 1957. We assume that he earned $70,000 a year before retirement, and right now in today's dollars, this person can expect to receive about $24,000 a year in today's dollars in Social Security benefits when they retire. So if you were thinking, all right, I'm $70,000, and then you retire, and suddenly that income drops by 2/3. And by the way, that $24,000 is taxable income. So that's not even everything you get to take home. That's before taxes, okay? You can see why retirement would be a huge drop in income for most people. And unfortunately, the people who did not prepare for it ahead of time are the ones that you see by no desire of their own, usually, still working. 75 years old, still greeting you at the front door of Walmart, or down here there's an elderly gentleman who is the guy who wipes down and scrubs people's cars at the car wash, and he does it mostly for tips. And you feel bad when you see folks like that, because here's a person who should be out fishing or playing golf, whatever they wanted to do with themselves, but they had to keep working. It's one thing if you want to keep working, it's another thing entirely if you have to. But this is why you see people in that situation, because they got to retirement and Social Security is there for them, but they didn't have any of the other three legs, and it created an enormous shortfall in income. Okay, so we talked a little bit about, and this is to get a visual look at the gap and why we're doing this. So we looked a little bit first at how to estimate your annual expenses in retirement, and then we talked about the estimated income in retirement. And again, this will be different for every person. That's why a financial plan has to be a personal thing. And we will now identify whatever the difference is between the expenses you think you'll have in retirement and the already known income sources. There's that gap, and the remainder of that gap is what you need to fill in with your own retirement savings and investments. Okay, it is the gap that we're trying to save for. All right, very good. Okay, and most people, by the way, again, don't get all three legs. They only get the two. Okay, now that could seem like, now let me give you an example in dollars just to show you what we're talking about here. Let's say that you find out after you do your math, and I'll put it in the big box here at the bottom, that you're going to need $50,000 a year in today's expenses, in today's dollars rather, to cover your annual expenses in retirement. So that's $50,000 a year is your estimated retirement lifestyle. Okay, and let's assume after you figure out all of the various places that you're going to get pension money from, that you're going to have a total of $20,000 worth of Social Security that's coming, and that's it. So there's a $30,000 per year gap that you're trying to fill. And if you remember from a few slides ago that we estimate that you'll be retired for, let's just use the round number of 25 years. So you need $30,000 a year for 25 years. That can seem pretty daunting, doesn't it? That's kind of why I paused for dramatic impact. But if you multiply that $30,000 per year times 25 years, that is a pot of money of $750,000 that's necessary to cover that expense entirely. Okay, now that is $750,000 from day one. But you don't really need all of that money the first day you retire, because hopefully your money will remain invested and it's going to be earning interest, and you'll only draw out enough to cover that shortfall, and meanwhile the pot of money continues to grow. So you can stretch out a smaller amount of money over those 30 or 25 years retired if you keep it invested in our earning interest. Okay, so in this same example, when we ran some numbers backwards, we said we need $30,000 a year for 25 years, And we did kind of the reverse of an investment graph. We did a spend down graph to see how much money would you need if we earned, let's say, 6%, to how much money would you need in a lump sum if it still earned 6% to cover that $30,000 gap for this person. And the number was significantly lower than $750,000. It's actually only $384,000 if you can make sure you get a consistent return on the money over time. Okay? So now hopefully that gives you a little bit more of a, okay, maybe we can retire, because if you're 40 years old, I think hitting $1 million or $750,000 in 20 years might seem really daunting. I mean, $1 million in 25 years, or 20 years, let's say, is $50,000 a year you'd have to save in order to get to that million. It seems impossible. But if you can say, can we get you to $384,000, and that will give you $30,000 a year in supplemental money, that is much more doable. And I think that's when you go, okay, all right, this makes more sense. I don't have to find $4,000 a month to do this. I might be able to do this with $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 if you're 40 years old. So I want you to take a good look at that. Yes, if you were to take that pot of money the day you retire and bury it in the backyard, you need $750. If you keep it growing over the time of your retired life, you'll actually need somewhere in the order of $375,000 to $400,000. In this case, $384,000. Okay. Hopefully that makes more sense. Okay. All right. Now the last thing we did not discuss that we need to take into is inflation and what will happen to your dollars. Now the numbers so far that we've given you are all accurate in terms of, if you invest this, it will be this in the future. What we have not included and what we've not taken into account yet is how much inflation is going to impact what that money will buy when you get there. So in the financial plans we do for our clients, our computers automatically adjust for the inflation rate that I give the machine to tell it not only do we have this lump sum, but it actually needs to be this lump sum to continue to buy the same amount of goods that dollar will buy today. If you're not familiar with the concept of inflation, it's very simple. The number of dollars that circulate in our economy is always growing because of banks lending, and the Fed can create new money to keep the economy stimulated. So there's always more and more and more dollars floating around in our economy. And because there are only a certain number, let's say, of houses available, those houses start to become worth more and more and more dollars, not because the house has really grown in value, but because there's so many dollars now that they're not worth as much as they used to be. So it takes more dollars to buy that thing than it used to. Okay, so that's what inflation is in a nutshell. And we've had very unnaturally low inflation for the last about 7 years since the last recession, 7 or 8 years. So, but even including that though, the average rate of inflation in the United States has been 2.3%. If you take away this weird time where we've had very, very low inflation, the average over the previous 20 years is about 3.5%, 3.25 is the actual number. So somewhere between 2 and 3% is the average annual rate of inflation. And that means that money that in 25 years will be buying significantly less stuff than it does today. Okay, so let me give you another quick example on inflation and why we need to make sure you adjust your numbers up for inflation. If you put $5,000 a year away and earn 6% return, like it shows on this graph, the blue line shows the actual dollars that you would earn in a 30-year time period, which would be a $395,000 account. Okay, now when you account for inflation, it doesn't drop the amount of dollars in your account, but what it does change is how much that 395 will buy. So if you have a 30-year account and you accumulate 395, prices have gone up on things for those same 30 years. In that 30 years of time, that money will now only buy about half of what it would have bought today. So you need to make sure that you take into account that 30 years out, you probably should take that number, if you remember the previous page, of about 385,000 for that example, and you might want to consider doubling it. So that's why when you hear financial planners talk about the average family needs $1 million or $2 million to be saved, this is why. It's mostly because of the effect of inflation over a long period of time, making things difficult to buy and more expensive to buy. So make sure that you take inflation into account. I won't beat this to death, and if this is complicated, make sure that you get with your own financial or tax planner to make sure that they've got this incorporated into whatever financial plan that you have. Okay, now let's move on to the next stop on the roadmap, which is let's talk about the tax advantage vehicles that are available for you to save money in for retirement. And there's basically two main groups I'm going to talk about. One is your personal plans that are available to you, and then we'll talk very quickly about the employer-sponsored plans. And then I'm going to break each of those into two subgroups. One is called a traditional and one is called a Roth, and we're going to talk about those in a minute. But in a broad sense, the reason that you want to save in a tax-advantaged way is very simple. Tax deferral helps the money grow faster than if you have to pay tax. Every time your account earns a little profit and then you have to pay tax on it, it's just 2 steps forward, 1 step back all the time. And if you can put them into something that protects them, your growth from that taxation at the time it's happening, from while the growth is happening, that's going to be the fastest way to ramp up to that number that you need in your financial plan. So a couple of things we talk about very quickly. Please, the number one thing you should do is take full advantage of any employer-sponsored retirement plans you have available. That's your 401k. If you're a school teacher or a nonprofit, 403b or 457. Sometimes they call them TSAs, through savings accounts. There's several names for these things, but make sure if your employer's got one that you take full advantage. And then also after that, consider contributing to what's called a traditional or a Roth IRA if you qualify for those. And I'm going to talk about those very much. In fact, show you why you want to save in a tax-advantaged vehicle if you can. Okay, this is the same kind of example where we're showing you a contrasting graph. But let's say you started with $10,000, you put in one time in year one and just forgot about it, and you put it into your tax-sheltered 401k account. So the pink line shows what that would grow to, which would be after 30 years, $57,435 at 6% interest. Okay. Now, assuming you're in the 28% tax bracket, we showed you what would happen if you just went over to Scottrade and opened a regular brokerage account and got 6% return. But because that's not protected from taxes, taxes are due every year on the growth. So that blue line shows what the effect of taxes are on that interest over the same amount of time. So same amount of money, same amount of time, same amount of interest, just one is tax protected and one is not. So you could have $57,000 in an account, or you could have $35,500 in an account, and you put out the same amount of effort and got the same return on it. So we say absolutely do a tax-advantaged account if you can. By the way, interestingly, if you look at the number under the $57,000, if you see where it says the after-tax, let's assume that you invested your money in the tax-sheltered account, got to retirement, and you said, I want it all out. Give it to me all right now. You would pay tax on that entire amount as it comes out of the account. But even if you did that, you would still have $6,000 more than if you let the government tax it every single time you made profit over the 30 years. So it's still better to do it that way rather than pay it nickel and dime. Okay? Now let's move into the various kinds of vehicles. Most of you will be familiar with this name at least, called an IRA. This is your personal retirement account. Anyone in America can have one, even if you have another plan through work. Okay? IRAs are branched into two different types now. One is called traditional IRA, and one is called Roth IRA. The difference between these two is simply how you get your tax break. Okay? In a traditional IRA, and I'll make this very, very simple, you get a tax deduction now for putting money into it each tax year that you put money in. It goes into the IRA account, tax protected, and grows for as long as it's in there without paying tax on it. But when you start to withdraw the money out the other side, now it's taxed. Okay, so it's sort of like, and the idea behind these used to be that in your younger years when you're making more money and you are in a higher tax bracket, you get a tax break for saving for your retirement, and then when you retire, your kids are grown, your mortgage is paid off, your expenses are lower, so you'll be in a lower tax bracket, so that it made more sense to not pay the higher tax and pay the lower tax. That just made sense. As a financial advisor looking forward, our government has spent a lot of money, and I think we're going to have higher taxes in the future to help pay for that than previous generations did. So if you're 40 years old or younger, you're probably looking at the lowest tax rates of your life now. Okay, so not too long ago, about 15 years ago, they created a new IRA that basically the taxes are just flip-flopped. So that's called a Roth IRA. And what that means is that you don't pay the tax, you pay the tax on the money now, and it goes into the account and grows tax-free just like an IRA account. But because you paid the tax now on it, no matter how much it grows to in retirement, the money that comes out of it in retirement will be tax-free. So that's something to consider. And I'm gonna talk about those in very quick, more detail here in the next couple of slides. But in traditional or Roth IRAs, let me give you a couple of just bullet points on these. You are allowed to contribute up to $5,500 per year into those accounts. $1,000 more than that if you are over the age of 50. They call those catch-up contributions, okay? One of the reasons to save for them is that they have lots of tax advantage features. They're going to grow tax protected no matter how much profit is generated, no matter how aggressive the investments have been, no matter what you do with them inside it, they are sheltered. They're never going to be taxed as long as the money remains in those accounts, okay? In both of these traditional or Roth IRAs, you have a huge number of investment options available to you. If you go down to a brokerage firm, or there's a lot of places that'll open an IRA account, you can have gold in it, you can have stocks and bonds and mutual funds, you can even have real estate in some IRA accounts. So there's a huge number of things that you have the ability to invest in your personal retirement account. Now the Roth and traditional have different qualifications and characteristics that I'm going to go over here in the next two slides. It talks about contributing to them. So in a traditional IRA, here's some things that make you eligible. Okay, to have an account and to contribute to it that year, you have to have had a taxable income. Okay, so you have to have worked that year. You can't contribute to an account if you don't have it. There is a way if one of the spouses stays home called a spousal IRA. I won't get into that, but there's some ways around that if you have a homemaker as part of your family structure. So you got to be under the age of 70 and a half and have an income. Okay. Now, most people assume automatically that the contributions to an IRA would be tax deductible. And for most of us, that's true. But the IRS does one quick check, and it looks to see, make sure that if you were covered by an employer-sponsored plan that you didn't use, you may not be able to use the deduction of an IRA. You can still do it, but you may not be able to deduct it. Okay? They also look at your income and your tax filing status to make that determination. So definitely get with your CPA or tax preparer to answer that question for you. Okay? Now the difference between that and a Roth is this. Roths are not available, Roth IRAs are not available to everyone in America. They are income dependent. So you have to make less than a set limit by the IRS, and that changes every year. They kind of scale it up every year where the upper limits are before that Roth IRA is available to you. Okay, so that's the first thing to remember. The other one is none of the contributions to a Roth are deductible. Okay, they're all after-tax contributions. That's what makes a Roth a Roth. The taxes have been paid now, so they'll never paid again, is what you're hoping. Okay, and just like an IRA, though, both of them, their funds will grow tax-deferred while they're inside it. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the withdrawal rules, okay, or distributions, we call them in the industry. For traditional IRAs, when you start to take money out, they are always subject to federal income tax. Okay, so the IRS has waited a long time to tax that money in many cases. In fact, they will start to force out the money out of your IRA at the age of 70 and a half to tax it. Those are called required minimum distributions. And you'll see that as you get toward that age where the government has been waiting forever to tax that income, and so they start to force it out at that age. But let's say, well, what if I take it out before I'm retired? Well, if you are under the age of 59 and a half, not only is all of the distributions going to be taxed as income, but if you are under 59 and a half, you're going to be subject to an additional 10% penalty, or we call early withdrawal penalty or premature distribution tax. Okay, Roth IRAs get just a touch more complicated. If you had a qualified reason to take the money out, they are federal income tax free forever, no matter how much it grew to. Here's what qualifies a withdrawal. You are 5 years, you've owned the account for at least 5 years, and you are age 59 and a half, or you are disabled, or you are a first-time home buyer, or you're using it, I didn't mention it here, but the college expenses for yourself or a dependent are included as reasons to be able to deduct it without a tax or penalty. Okay. Now, let's say you need it out for any other reason, just because. Because your contribution to a Roth was already taxed, that amount will never be taxed again. So you can always take out of a Roth up to the amount you put in with no tax or penalty due, no matter how old you are or how long you've had the account, regardless. The amount that went in can come back out. Okay. The problem where you'll be taxed and penalized if it's not a qualified distribution is on the growth. So if let's say you put in 10,000 and it grew to 15,000, but you took out 12,000, the first 10,000, the amount you put in would come out with no tax and no penalty. The last 2,000 that was growth on the account would not only be income taxed, but it would also give it a 10% penalty if you were not at least 59 and a half or disabled, first-time home buyer, or doing it for college. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense, and I won't really try to beat that one to death, especially in a seminar where I can't take questions. So here we've got, and here's a question that lots and lots of people ask when I start to do this is, all right, which one is better? I mean, I don't know which one is the right one for me. And and until we actually sit with you, we don't know for sure. I can give you kind of a broad brush answer, which I'm going to, but this is why financial plans are so importantly done with a professional person, where you're looking eye to eye and they're looking at your specific situation. Okay, but in general terms, most financial pros believe that a Roth IRA will probably give you more bang for the buck in the long run. Okay, but again, excuse me, it depends on your personal goals, your circumstances, the performance of the investments you pick. There's a lot of variables into that, whether that's correct. But in general terms, you usually will get more bang for the buck doing it in a Roth. Okay, a Roth is also something to consider if you want to minimize your taxes during retirement, because remember, everything else, pensions and Social Security, everything else will be taxable in retirement. So the Roth gives you a way to build that, to fill that gap with tax-free money rather than more taxable money. Okay. Also, if you want to keep and preserve some money for your beneficiaries later, like you may not even really use all this money and you want to pass it on to your heirs, that's easier to do in a Roth, because the government doesn't start forcing those withdrawals out of the account at age 70 and a half like they do with a traditional IRA. Okay. On the other hand, a traditional IRA might be a better tool for you if you're looking to lower your current tax bill today. Okay. That's something to consider, and that's why you need a tax preparer or financial advisor to help you with that decision. Now, one thing I should also point out is that it's not an either-or proposition. You can have a Roth and an IRA account, and you can split that $5,500 or $6,500 per year contribution a little bit into each account if you choose to. So you're not limited one or the other. You can actually have both. Okay, so that was a look at personal plans as quickly as I could. Now let's look quickly at just one common employer-sponsored 401k. I just want to give you the differences between what they do for you and why I like them so much versus the individual accounts. Okay, first of all, an employer-sponsored plan, the amount you can put in per year is significantly higher. In this case, you can see that you can defer up to $18,000 per year as opposed to $5,500. And if you are 50 or older, your catch-up contribution is $6,000 more. So you could actually put up to $24,000 a year away. And the government does, again, ratchet these numbers up slowly over time based on the cost of living. Okay, you can also, and this is really an amazing thing. So if you're like close to your like a higher tax bracket. Let's say you make $100,000 a year. If you elect to put $18,000 of that into your 401k, your taxable income this year is only going to be $82,000. Okay, the funds will grow tax deferred until they're withdrawn, just like an IRA account. And here's one of my favorite reasons is that if the employer matches your contribution, and you'll see this a lot, ask your employer if they have a match. If they do, guys, that's free money. Your company's laying free money on the table for you. Pick it up. Even if you didn't invest the money, just let it sit in cash. If you at least contribute the amount that your company will match, you're getting a 100% return on your money just for doing it. Guys, the 401k is a fantastic program. Take advantage of it if you can, okay? You are, in this case, this is a little different than IRAs. You will be limited in the investment choices you have available, okay? The government doesn't let you go, your employer especially, go haywire with investment options in an employer-sponsored plan. They are going to be very safe, relatively safe investments called mutual funds, safe compared to like an individual stock or a commodity investment. But you'll get a collection of about 30 or 40 funds to choose from usually in a 401k, and they should still cover the broad range of investment choices, but they're designed so that you're not at risk of a complete collapse of your account. There'll be times the market's down and your account may be down, but there's not a chance that, if you're in a mutual fund and it's a collection of 300 company stocks, to have the entire fund go bankrupt would be nearly impossible. So there's a much safer investment. That'd be like sitting on a stool with 300 legs, and if one of them knocks out from under you, big deal. Okay, so that's one of the things that 401ks are different. You're not going to have the wide world to invest in. It's going to be more limited. But just like an IRA, your distributions made before the age of 59 and a half are going to be subject to the same premature withdrawal penalty. Now, if your employer is very with they are, most companies are now starting to allow Roth contributions inside your 401k. These are huge. They're very, very important. Contributions, just like in a Roth IRA, are after-tax dollars, not before tax. The funds will grow tax deferred, just like always, until they're withdrawn. Okay. The thing that's great about the Roth 401k is that, number one, it's not income dependent. Anybody can do it. So even if you have a high income, you're going to be eligible for Roth contributions into your 401k. Okay. Also, Roth contributions are significantly higher in a 401k than they would be in the IRA. So the same contribution maximums apply for the 401k, 18,000 or 24 if you're over the age of 50. Okay, and again, it's not an either-or proposition. You can do some amount of your money pre-tax and some amount of your money Roth if your company permits that. Okay, qualified distributions, just like a Roth IRA, are going to be income tax-free. There's your requirements: 5 years of holding time and either 59 and a half or disabled. Okay, non-qualified distributions are subject to tax, and a 10% premature distribution penalty may apply to the earnings portion. Again, not to the entire balance, but to the earnings portion. Okay. Other than that, the Roth 401k and the traditional 401k have all the same rules. So this is the only difference between a Roth IRA and a Roth 401k, is that a Roth IRA, you could take your money out for any reason at any time. Roth 401k, you still have to have what the IRS calls a triggering event to get money out of those plans. If you have questions on that, please make sure to shoot me an email or give me a call or contact your financial pro. We'll be happy to answer those questions. It's just easier to do it to answer a specific question than try to guess what everybody's thinking right now. All right, so those are the two major plans, personal or employer sponsored. Okay, so let me talk just very quickly about another investment product that is, I believe, missold sometimes in the place of another type of retirement account, or sold inside a retirement account, which is not necessary, and they're called annuities. The first thing I want you to understand is an annuity is not an account. It is a contract between you and an insurance company. The way that these accounts work is you put in a certain amount of money over a period of time, and it's a certain date in the future, the company switches on a guaranteed income stream usually a monthly check of some sort, for the remainder of a person's life or a certain period of years, or however you arrange it with the insurance company. So it's not an investment account as much as it is a contract for benefits in the future. And one easy way to think about an annuity is if you ever played the Powerball or Lotto and you put a ticket, you fill out your numbers. The game will ask you, do you want the cash payout option if you win? You won't win, by the way. Don't fool yourself. Please spend your money on a retirement account. But let's say you bought the ticket. It says, do you want the cash option or do you want the annuity option? And what the annuity option would be is, and it's always a little bit more money than the cash, but the annuity option is X amount of dollars per month for life or for 25 years or something like that. So that's the way that annuities work, is you build a lump sum, but you don't do it for the lump sum, you do it for a guaranteed stream of money forever, okay? So why do they, that sounds great, right? I mean, most pensions are actually an annuity, but why would I say as a financial advisor that those are missold, and why would you not want to buy them? Well, let me give you a couple of perks for them first, and then we'll explain why. Just like an IRA account or something like that, the money that goes in will grow tax protected, okay? And they even may provide some death benefit features, such as if you build this money up and then before you pass away, or before you get your certain amount of money back out of it, and if you pass away, we'll give the remainder as a lump sum to your beneficiaries. There are things like that some annuities can do. There's a lot of bells and whistles that you can add to an annuity contract. You will pay for each of those bells and whistles. So just make sure you understand that nothing's given away by the insurance company. All the bells and whistles that you would put into an annuity are things that you will pay extra for. Okay? Now the one benefit to an annuity is there's no limit on the amount that can go in, as opposed to some of the other accounts. And this is why I will use them in the rare instances that we do. Let's say that I've got a business professional or like a medical doctor, and they've maxed out their 401k, and they've maxed out their IRA account, and they still have some money that they want to put away for retirement, or just for some future use way out there. They don't think they're going to need it anytime now. Well, that's where the annuity can be our option C for retirement savings, and we can grow that money tax protected, and there's no limit to the amount of money that we can put into it, okay? So that's why I would say that if you have not yet maxed out your 401k, then you probably don't need an IRA. What you might have an IRA for is when you leave a company and you have a little 401k balance, you can roll them over. They call a rollover into an IRA. But if you have a company plan, use it. And once you max that out, then you open an IRA account and use it, okay, and fill that one up. And then if you still have money that you're looking to save, that's when I would approach an annuity. Now sometimes these annuity products are sold inside a retirement account. Okay, well that to me is basically you're paying twice for the same feature, which is tax deferred growth. There is no reason to put a tax protected product inside a tax protected account. They both do the same thing, and you don't need to pay extra for all of those annuity features. Okay, so quickly on the other side of this graph, distributions coming out of an annuity, they act basically like a Roth IRA because the contributions were already taxed when they went in. Only the earnings portion of your annuity payout is going to be taxed. Okay, if you take it out before age 59 and a half, there is an additional 10% tax penalty because annuities were not meant to be short-term retirement vehicles. Now, one benefit for these annuities is because they're after-tax dollars to begin with, just like a Roth account, there's no required minimum distributions after age 70 and a half, so the money can stay in there for however long we need. And again, usually people can convert an annuity at some point into a guaranteed lifetime income stream. If you see that there's a couple of stars, little caveats in those bullet points, it's because at the bottom it says the company's promises and guarantees are dependent on the financial stability of the company. So if you ever do buy an annuity or a life insurance product, their ability to pay out is depending on their ability to survive long term. So make sure you go with a huge, reputable insurance company with a long history, so that you know exactly that company will probably be there and be able to make the payments and the promises that they will make. Okay. Now the last thing, and the reason why I try to avoid them primarily, is because annuities are extremely expensive. They are almost always commission-based products, so the agent who is going to sell them to you is going to make a nice fat commission for setting that up for you. Okay. Also, the insurance company incurs a lot of administrative expense to set up an annuity account and get it started. So for the first several years that you have an annuity, you will be subjected to a surrender charge, or what's called a contingent deferred sales charge, if you give up that contract. Let's say that you're in it for only 5 years and you have a 15-year surrender charge. I've seen some of them even longer than that. That you will have, you will lose a portion of your lump sum to the insurance company because you took it out sooner than they expected. Okay, so and then annuities have a lot of built-in fees. So there's usually I've seen annuities with fees up to 3.5% or more per year on your return. So even if you might get what's called a variable annuity, which lets you invest in something similar to mutual funds and get actual market growth, your return is being dragged down by all of these extra insurance fees that are buried into this thing. Most people find annuities are extraordinarily complicated to understand, and they always give you a great big thick book in a prospectus and things you won't read, and they know you won't read them. That's why they make them so burdensome and so full of bad language that's not English. So I just tend to, and you can tell my predisposition is not to use annuities for the most part. This is why is that they're complicated, they're redundant for retirement, and they're expensive. And there's cheaper ways to do it. And when you're dealing with things like taxes, inflation, and fees, all of those work against you when you're working toward trying to get to that magic lump sum. And you just can't have anything dragging behind your account, slowing it down. We've got to get that balance built. So that's one of the reasons that I don't use annuities and don't recommend them often. It's not to say we have a moratorium on them. We sometimes use them here at nVest, but not very often. Now, so lastly, some general investment considerations, regardless of how you invest or whether you use your IRA or your employer plan. A couple things. Number one, please remember that you're investing for a long-term goal. It's very, very normal to become nervous about tomorrow's stock market, even if it means nothing to you for the next 25 years. When you hear the market is down, you get nervous. That's a very normal human reaction, but unless you're living on your retirement money this month and you need to pay bills this month with it, today's stock market means nothing to you. In fact, the only thing it does for people who are still putting money into their accounts is a down market is a great thing. It gives you a chance to buy stuff on sale. Okay? It is when you are retired that a down market can be much more damaging. So we invest you differently when you're retired than when you're younger. Okay? That's part of the reason, again, to have a good financial advisor and have a relationship go a long ways. Hopefully that's what your relationship with your advisor should be. Okay? Another thing, please remember that risk and reward are always like rails on a train track, and where one goes, the other goes. You cannot have great return on an investment without significant market volatility or some sort of market risk. Okay? Anybody that tells you can get a great return with little or no risk is either lying to you or they don't know what they're talking about. Okay? So, but here's the things I want you to remember, because risk is a scary word. If you are 75 years old, the stock market tanking 20%, yes, that's a risk for you, because you're living on those dollars and you can't afford them to shrink like that. Okay? If you are 30 years old though, and you are saving money, today's stock market means nothing to you, but your risk is that you will be too conservative with your investing and it won't grow fast enough to outpace inflation. Your risk when you're younger is you're going to outlive your money. Okay? That's a very different risk than somebody who is already retired and already trying to make sure that they maximize the amount of money that they have in their retirement savings accounts. Okay? So please remember inflation when you're thinking of at least making sure your investments outpace inflation. Making sure that you get the return that's necessary to achieve your goal. And you don't have to go crazy with risk. Like what we say here at nVest is, once we know you and your goals, and we do some, we call role play with your risk tolerance, we figure out about you and I get to know you, and we know what your goal is, I will only bring on enough risk to accomplish your goals, but not more than that. We don't need to go crazy. So if you are a moderate risk investor because your goals can be met with an average of 6% return, we don't need to go through the roof looking at small micro companies and faraway lands. We can do it very easily here in the United States, or in a well diversified but very dinosaur large company kind of portfolio, so you don't have to take a lot of risk. Those are things that we do. That's where the financial advisor's expertise should play in, is once we know you, we're supposed to know the markets in the investment world well enough to know what's going to suit you and what's not. Okay? Make sure that you know your risk tolerance, and please also know that your risk tolerance may change over time. That's another thing that's very important. As you're, like I said, as you're 30 years old, your risk tolerance might be very aggressive. When you're 50 years old, it will not still be very aggressive. It'll start to be tailored back from that. So make sure that you adjust your investment strategy over the years as your risk tolerance changes, okay? And then also please make sure that you diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. At nVest, we have a couple of mantras: never more than 5% of our clients' money in any one company, and never more than 10% of our clients' money into any one alternative strategy. So we have, our group, our core stuff, and then we can play a little bit and tweak it for you, but we never put all your eggs anywhere near one basket. Okay? And finally, the last thing is please periodically check in on your investments. You don't have to do it every day. Please don't. That's too often. But make sure that you're looking at them every so often. Do not make emotional knee-jerk reactions to them, to market changes. Sit with your financial or tax person and reevaluate it. More importantly, I think you need to make sure, if you're my client, for example, that we communicate. We have a requirement of our clients at least once per year. We have a sit-down meeting to discuss your account. But it's not so much to evaluate your account. I'm doing that day to day, behind the scenes. But it's so that I can make sure that nothing in your life has changed that's going to cause me to change the investment strategy. The things that will cause us to have to make major changes to the way you invest is not so much the market. Sometimes that happens, but not very often. The thing that will make us have to make major changes to how you are invested are those things that happen in your life that come up unexpectedly. A divorce, or a death, or a birth of a grandchild or a child, or maybe you inherit money all of a sudden, or maybe you have a parent or sibling that needs financial help. There's all these things that come up in life that we just don't ever see coming. And if you don't get with your financial advisor every once in a while to make sure that your investment strategy is in sync with what's really happening in your life, that can be disastrous. So make sure that you do that. I think I beat that one to death. A couple of things very quickly on insurance that I want you to keep in mind. In any plan for financial independence and retirement, the one variable that never changes, the one thing that has to be there, is your income to make it work over that lifetime. Okay? If something happens to your income, your plan is shot, or you have protected against that by buying or getting an adequate amount of insurance to cover it. And although life insurance is one of those, that's not all of them. So let me talk just very quickly. Insurance, in a nutshell, transfers the risk of catastrophe, basically, to the insurer in exchange that you will pay a little bit of a premium, and they will assume the risk of something bad happens. So while you're working, the things that can derail your plan include mostly your inability to make an income. That may include a premature death, but it also may include, what if you're injured on the job? Or what if you're in a car accident and not injured, not killed, but injured to where you can't work for a period of time? So there's a possibility that you would look at disability insurance to cover that, to make sure that your income stream is still coming so that your family's financial needs can still get met. And life insurance, for the same thing. Again, nVest Advisors does some insurance business. We are not an insurance company. I use them really only, we write insurance business only to fill a gap that a client may have in their financial plan. I'm a big believer in buy cheap term insurance for the most part, and get it for the time you need it, and then get rid of it for the time you don't. Because in your retirement years, life insurance is less necessary usually. You have different needs. Your health insurance costs may be much higher than we anticipate. Having some additional health insurance, like a Medicare supplement plan, may go a long way to keeping your money in the pot, the size that we need to go the distance. Also, it's kind of a depressing thing to discuss, but in our last years of life, about statistically the last 4, we will usually need some sort of nursing home or assisted living care. For traditional male-female couples, the male is usually passes away a few years before the wife does, and the wife is generally the caregiver. But there's not always somebody there to take care of her. And so we look at, do we consider getting some long-term care insurance, or if we have need for both life insurance and long-term care, we can often get one policy that does both. A life insurance policy that gives you access to the death benefit early for nursing home care. So those are things that you can look at with your financial advisor or insurance agent. They shouldn't cost a lot, and I would definitely shop around before you went with somebody. There's no reason to pay ridiculous amounts of money for life insurance or long-term care or disability insurance. They're out there, they're inexpensive, and they're so worth it to make sure that you don't derail your own plan. Okay? Well, I hope that you've gotten a lot out of this. The last couple of bits of advice that I would give you is, now that you've got all this information, please don't waste it. Take the time. Now, if you've sat through this hour, now take the next hour and start to work on an actual financial plan. If you get bogged down, if it seems too difficult, if it's just mind-numbing and you don't want to do it, give us a call, and we're happy to help you, okay? We don't charge for that consultation. We just want you to be good at we want you to learn. We want you to learn, and then I want you to take what you've learned and act on it. Let me say that, okay? So develop your own roadmap. Please do, okay? I want you to start now. It's so critical. Please don't wait another month or another year. It'll just become another 2 years or another 5 years, and then you're so much further down the road, so much closer to the end for retirement purposes, and we won't have anything saved. So please, for your family's sake and for your personal sake, for your dignity in retirement's sake, start now, okay? I want you to invest regularly. Do not try to guess the stock market. Just put money in every single month on the same day. Now, if you're doing that through your 401k at work, great, because that's done on paydays and it's just systematic. What history has shown over time when this has been researched is that people who just put the same amount of money in on the same day every month have usually a lower cost of investment over time than they do if they try to second guess the market or pinpoint the right day to get in. Just be consistent and you'll do just fine. Okay? Make sure you purchase appropriate insurance coverage. Load it up at work, but remember, the work insurance isn't yours, and if you lose the job, you lose the insurance. So consider a personal policy. You do not have to spend a fortune. It's surprisingly inexpensive, but just get with somebody and get a quote. See if you can get the right amount of coverage. Okay? Finally, please review your plan on a regular basis and adjust it as you need to. Okay? In conclusion, I would love the opportunity to work with whoever is looking for a financial advisor. I know that this may not be the exact right time for you to call me yet, but I want to make sure that you know how, okay? If you have any questions, even if and there won't be any pressure to become a client, or I won't try to get you on the phone, feel free to email me. I'll put my email address up in a moment, and I will respond back to you as best I can on your situation. I might need more info from you before I can give you a specific answer, but I'll do my best, okay? So what now? Please take the post-webinar survey. You'll see this in the info description underneath this this YouTube channel, this video description. You'll see a link. I'd love to know what you thought of it, what you would change, whether you'd recommend this to other people, and what kind of topics you'd like to see in the future. We'd love to hear from you, okay? If you liked what you heard today, please consider following us on either, subscribe to this YouTube channel, follow our podcast, or like or follow our pages on all the various social medias. We'd love to have you. Like I said, subscribe to the podcast at iTunes. It's called Money in 30, and we'd love to have you there, and those are going to become much more timely. And also, you can subscribe to our monthly client newsletter directly on our website. There's a subscription link right on it, so go to nvestadvisors.com and look for that link that says subscribe to our newsletter. If you need to discuss your personal situation or have questions specific to you about this particular seminar, give me an email at jtorgerson@nvestadvisors.com, okay? And I'll be happy to set up a quick phone call with you, or just respond by email if I think that'll accomplish it. and we'll get your questions answered. I hope this has been a great presentation for you. I look forward to hearing from anybody who's got questions or comments. Especially, I'd love to hear your comments on not only this presentation, but on things you'd like us to see us do in the future. God bless you guys. Have a great afternoon.